On behalf of the European Science Foundation, I would like to welcome you all for this online event. I'm just going to give you 2 words on the European Science Foundation. The European Science Foundation Science Connect, it's an independent non-profit association that has been established more than 45 years ago. It is a European organization, considering Europe as the boundary of the Council of Europe, so the 47 member states, much broader than the European Union. It is a scientific organization. It is not a political organization. It is not tied to any political institution, and it's neutral. It's non-biased, and it addresses sciences and research in all its disciplines. What we do on a daily basis is we provide support to research and to research processes at European level. We do a lot of independent grant evaluation where we do the scientific assessment of research projects and fellowships that are submitted to a partner organization in the context of competitive calls. We're involved in many European research projects funded by the Commission, and a good part of them in the SWAF program. And we're also hosting scientific platforms in some disciplinary areas that are looking more at policy elements in some specific topics. Esf today is approximately 32 staff members. We're located in this beautiful building in Strasbourg, and we're a very active organization with a big network, not only in Europe but also beyond. And all of our staff and our network and all of you, I know, are witnessing interesting time these days. And over the past couple of months, we saw the links between science and society becoming more visible and tighter as well. We see on one side a society that is evolving at its own pace with its own rules and own tools. And sometimes these are not really the same than what one will live or will experience in institutes or in the departments. There could be sometimes some kind of a distortion between the two. The expectations from the citizen are growing. The information flow is also growing. Citizens and the general public are calling for transparency. They're calling for integrity in research, and they're also calling for inclusiveness in research. Science today cannot be hidden and should not be hidden from the general public. That's for citizens, but people and the staff, the scientists, the researchers, the administrative staff, the technical staff, all those involved in the academic world in university or institutes are also indeed part of the society, and their expectations are also growing. They're also expecting the research processes to go forward. So it's not only about science with and for society. We should also put things the other way and think sometimes about society with and for science. And in this context, the research organizations, the research institution, they really have a duty. We all have a duty to make things moving forward. This responsibility towards the society demonstrate that research organizations are actually the best and maybe the only medium to implement policies and help to reconcile science with society. It's important that organizations, all research organizations, understand the importance of responsible innovation for themselves, for their own internal processes, for their staff, but also for the society in the long run. And as a boundary organization, the European Science Foundation is really committed to make this happen. As Eugenia said, we're involved in a number of projects supported by the SWAF program. One of this is a GRACE project that we're coordinating with a consortium of very valuable partners. And that team is proposing you the event today, and I'll now give the floor to Ildi to present you the GRACE project. And I thank you all for your attendance.
Thank you, Nicolas. Yeah. So now, Ildi, if you want to share your screen. Thank you very much, Eugenia. Thank you very much, Nicola, for the introduction. So today I'm going to explain very briefly what responsible research and innovation is and how the GRACE project grounding responsible research and innovation practices in research funding and performing organization advocates RRI in the European research area. So just to start, I would like to explain what responsible research and innovation is. So basically, responsible research and innovation is an approach to research and innovation actions that implies that societal actors, including researchers, policymakers, businesses, and citizens work together during the whole research and innovation process to better align these processes and their outcomes with the values, the needs, and the expectations of society, as it was mentioned before by Nicola as well. And basically, this requires that the actors are all involved in the research and innovation processes at the very early stage to make sure that they understand the consequences and the possible outcomes of their actions and have the know-how to evaluate the outcomes and the options in terms of societal needs and moral values as well. And decision-making mechanisms have to make sure that these considerations become actually functional part of the design and the development of new research products and processes and services. And in order to assure this, responsible research and innovation should become actually a key part of research and innovation processes and be established as a system-wide approach, not only in society at large, but starting at the level of institutions actually. RRI actions are generally promoted either by actions on its thematic elements, such as public engagement, open access, gender equality, research ethics and integrity, science education and governance, or by integrated actions that promote institutional change that foster the uptake of the RRI approach by stakeholders and by institutions. And in this context, the overall aim of the GRACE project is to contribute to spreading and embedding responsible research and innovation in the European research area by facilitating sustainable processes of institutional change in research funding and performing organizations, by the development of a set of smart grounding actions in a selection of 6 RPFOs, and grounding actions, meaning actions and coordinated set of activities that put down the basis of RRI in the institutions and institutional processes. And by coordinating a selection of these grounding actions into specific roadmaps towards RRI, and by developing an approach that facilitates a so-called rapid institutional change by providing expert support in the frame of mutual learning and co-creation environment. And GRACE is actually based on the assumption mentioned above that responsible research and innovation has a role in the complex changes affecting research and innovation, including institutional life and settings. And in this view, RRI in GRACE is first of all a strategy that helps the research funding and performing organizations to manage better the circumstances, the needs, processes, and everything affecting their research and innovation ecosystems, including their own internal operating mechanisms, but also an approach that is aimed at promoting a better interaction between the organizations and their external actors, their network, in fact. And it also provides a more efficient set of means to cope with their current activities, such as research assessment or internal processes, including settings for work-life balance. And the challenge of the GRACE project is actually faced by a wonderful consortium of 10 partners composed of 6 implementing organizations. These are the organizations that foster at their organization to implement the pillars or the entire concept of responsible research in innovation, responsible research and innovation processes at the everyday life of their organization, and 6 cooperating expert organizations that help them to do so. So this is all about introduction to RRI from my side and to the GRACE project. And now I leave the space to more details on institutional changes in general to the colleagues from ARC Foundation.
Thank you very much, Ili. So now, yeah, we leave the floor to Zoya Damianova and Marco Haydinjak from the ARC Fund. They will talk about the concept of RRI and institutional change.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you to the European Science Foundation for inviting Marco and myself as representatives of ARC Fund to share our experience on in 2 projects focused on responsible research and innovation and institutional change. The first project, it ended last year. Maybe you know it a bit. This is the responsible research and innovation in practice. And the overall objective of Rri Practice was to analyze Rri-related discourses and pathways to implementing Rri and to integrating the Rri policy framework, including barriers and drivers in 23 research conducting and research funding organizations. Rri Practice was a truly international project because we had partners not only from the EU, but we also had organizations as active partners from the US, from Brazil, China, India, Australia. So it was as well the challenge to speak about policy framework focused or conceptualized in the European Union countries, but also to try and promote this policy framework to countries beyond the European Union. So it was one of the challenges that we had in this project. This is just a list of the consortium partners. The website of the project, rripractice.eu, is still active and will be active for at least 1 more year. And just to mention the coordinator, the Oslo Metropolitan University of Norway. The focus of Rri Practice was on studying the national discourse on responsible research and innovation in the 12 participating countries. And then it was focused on performing sort of Rri audits in research conducting and research funding organizations. We have put here policy organizations because, for instance, in the case of Bulgaria, we had not only the National Science Fund in our focus of study, but we also were focused on studying the Rri activities of the Ministry of Education and Science. So the scope of Rri Practice was to perform Rri reviews, or I call them audits, in 23 research funding and research conducting organizations. And the scope was on all of the Rri policy keys, the 5 keys without management, but we also studied the Rri process dimensions: anticipation, inclusion, reflection, and responsiveness. And for each of the organizations under scrutiny, the partners had to produce Rri outlooks, which were focused on future actions in the in these 23 organizations, and each RRI outlook ended up with RRI recommendations and action plans. The RRI recommendations were focused or addressed the national level policymakers and as well the EU level policymakers, of course, with a focus on RRI, while the action plans were strictly focused on the organizations under scrutiny. This was the analytical approach to the organizational studies, which we adopted in Rri Practice. So based on the institutional theory, we focused on studying for each of the organizations, structural, cultural issues, and issues related to organizational interchange. And in all these three categories, we looked at the aspects of the organizations, the drivers and the barriers, and also on the very bottom row, you can see the methods that were employed during our work at the organizational level. We started with analyzing the formal documents for each organization. At the national level, of course, we looked at some legislative pieces. We performed interviews with employees at the different levels in all organizations under scrutiny, and then we had some focus groups, and in the column focused on interchange related issues, we performed media analysis, and also we conducted interviews with the top management. I have focused the attention of the presentation on the review of ARC Fund. First of all, ARC Fund, just a few words about our organization. It is a non-governmental organization, and it has a mission, of course, and just to mention, in Bulgaria, according to our national legislation, we are registered to the, or we are established to the public benefit, to say. So we have also our societal mission. So our mission is to drive the development of a knowledge-based economy and society through targeted promotion of innovation, knowledge transfer, cross-border networking, and capacity building. I will just mention the three thematic programs of ARC Fund. The oldest one is the program which is focused on supporting the small businesses in Bulgaria to innovate. The next program is the program which is focused on safer internet for children and young people. And the youngest program, this is the STIP program, which stands for Science, Technology and Innovation Policy Program. And this is where Marco and myself are working, and our activities are more cross-border, more at the European level. And this is the program which is mostly active in Horizon 2020 projects. So, after having organized the interviews and focus groups within the organization, in terms of responsibility as a research performing organization, we draw the conclusion that we perceive responsibility in research as a broader socially responsible behavior, transparency, and accountability to societal actors and stakeholders. And we also distinguish between outcome-related responsibility and process-related responsibility. When we speak about outcomes and responsibility related to outcomes, we understand this as the need to align the goals and directions of our research with the broader societal needs and public preferences. And in terms of process-related responsibility, for us, it means good scientific practice. I focused on ethics because the next project, which is the Ethno system, is focused on ethics, and it's kind of a continuation of our work that we have commenced within Rri Practice. So what about ethics? How we interpret ethics in ArcFund, how we understand it. Ethics is about engaging with societal issues from a value-neutral perspective. It's also about trust building in our relations with external stakeholders. Ethics is also understood as legality, transparency, and fairness in our research practice. I just want to mention that all funding of ArcFund comes from competitive-based projects. We don't have national public funding because the national research law does not recognize non-governmental organizations as research players. It's only about publicly funded organizations like universities and the research institutes of the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences and the National Agricultural Academy. And finally, for us, ethics is about the wider preoccupations with the norms and orientations of socially embedded research. After conducting all our work at the level of ArcFund, the reviews, we produced outlooks on all 5 dimensions, on all 5 keys of the Rri policy framework. And in terms of ethics, we have identified in our organization the areas where we need to improve. So although ethics in research is partially addressed in our articles of incorporation, the development of organizational policy on ethics in research and research integrity is still not fully addressed. So we need to develop this, and also to develop a code of research conduct. This work implies new responsibilities for ArcFund's program director and for the program managers of the 3 thematic programs. We also foresee the establishment of a research ethics board, including also external experts in research ethics. Training on research ethics for all our members of staff, including administration, is also perceived as an area where action is needed. And we also foresee to start reporting on not only on research ethics, but on all 5 keys of Rri in our annual reports. In the right-hand column, we have also identified indicators for success. Here you can see only the qualitative indicators, but also we have planned for measuring our progress in each of the 5 keys of Rri with quantitative indicators. But if you're more interested, you can have a look at all organizational studies on the website of the project. They are available there. And now I transfer the floor to Marco to speak about the Ethno system, which is focused on research ethics. Okay, Marco, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zoya. Well, one of the possible ways to implement the Rri concept and try to bring about institutional change in the research performing and research funding organizations is being developed and will be tested in the Ethno system project. This is a project which started in January 2020 and will run until December 2022. And it includes, if you can just bring back the previous slide, please, Zoya. It consists of 10 partners from 8 countries. And the partnership includes 2 universities, 1 research funding organization, 2 research centers, and one technological park. These 6 organizations are going to implement and test the ETNA office management system, which will be developed within the project. So the main objective of the project is therefore to develop and implement an ethics governance system for grounding good RRI practices in higher education, research funding, and research performing institutions. And this is going to be done by designing an organizational structure and the so-called ETNA office, which will support the uptake of RRI concept and practices by providing guidelines and tools for managing responsible research and innovation policies in actions within the organizations. Basically, the ETNA office is a management structure that aims to ensure that the research and innovation processes are conducted in line with the RRI principles. This includes both the RRI keys and the AR dimensions. The person in each organization who should be placed in charge of this process is ethics officer for research and innovation. This person will be tasked with the coordination of all activities which are linked to the infrastructure of ethical governance of research and innovation space. Ethics officer is also responsible for the proper functioning of the whole system, including the coordination of the ethics committee for research and innovation and for monitoring the commitment, achievements, and progress on the RRI indicators and implementations. To make all this possible, ETNA system envisages 4 main tools. In the first place, of course, is the Code of Ethics and Good Practices in Research and Innovation. This is a formal document which contains an explicit declaration of the values that are supposed to orient the conduct of all actors involved in the R&I processes. And these values are related to gender equality, open access, public engagement, and research integrity or research ethics. Ethical code also promotes good practices and establishes indicators about the organization's RRI performance. The next important tool or body is the Ethics Committee on the previous slide. Ethics Committee, which is a multidisciplinary advisory, consultative, and arbitral body, which promotes the code of ethics and good practices and also issues reports and makes recommendations on all issues regarding the interpretation and application of the code. The committee also supervises the ethical performance of research and innovation activities in the organization. And finally, the committee deals with all the suggestions, alerts, complaints received through the ethical line. The ethical line is the 3rd tool of the ETNA system or ETNA office, and it represents an open and secure communication channel through which all employees, participants in the processes, stakeholders can express their notifications, complaints, suggestions regarding the RRI and research and innovation work. They can also suggest the necessary steps to improve the code of ethics and in general, everything related to the research and innovation process in the organization. And finally, there are progress indicators on RRI used to monitor the level of compliance with the code of ethics and good practices. And they are divided in 3 main groups. There are performance indicators which show whether a certain action has been implemented and how many times this has been done. There are results indicators which convey the extent of the impact of the actions. And finally, the outcome indicators which measure the effect of the action. More about Etnosystem can be found on the etnosystem.eu webpage. And of course, I'm here for additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Soya and Marco, for this wonderful presentation. So now we are running a little late, so I will start right away and we will leave the question and answer later after my presentation. So for all participants, if you have any questions that rise through the presentation of Soya and Marco, please write them down in the question and answer section of Zoom. So now I will start sharing my screen. Yep. Yeah, here we are. So, yeah. So I didn't introduce myself. I'm Eugenia Villarchao. I'm a junior science officer at the European Science Foundation, and I'm coordinator of the implementation of GRACE at ESF. I will present now the ESF Roadmap towards institutional change on RRI that was developed in the framework of a GRACE project. So as Nicolas said in the greetings, ESF has a very important role as a boundary organization. So we thought we had as objectives in participating in GRACE project to develop a holistic approach to RRI, meaning embedding RRI in our internal activities at ESF, but also embedding RRI in the external activities, meaning what Nicola explained before. We have this service of grant evaluation, and here we can play a very important role. And also we have another objective, that is to promote RRI framework within our network. So we thought about which were the more relevant RRI keys that for the European Sun Foundation. So to begin with, we focus in these three keys: the gender equality key, the research ethics and integrity, and the open access key. However, when we started the implementation of these actions towards these three keys, we noticed that the governance key was actually missing, and this is very essential if we want to achieve significant and sustainable institutional change. So how did we start it in GRACE? We had the support of the expert organizations, as Ildi mentioned, within GRACE, that provide us with this reflection tool. This was made by Aarhus University. So what is a grounding action? First of all, a grounding action is any action that aimed at implementing or favoring institutional change. So this reflection tool helps us to define which are the grounding actions that we had to do at ESF if we want to achieve our objectives of embedding RRI. So first of all, it starts with the big vision. So where do we want to be and what do we want to achieve in the long run? Then we have to set the success criteria, which are the concrete results that would signal if we are in the good track, which are the expected results if we implement the actions. So this means breaking down the vision into manageable goals and also to smart indicators. As Soya mentioned, the indicators are qualitative and also quantitative, so we can measure and track institutional change. Then we have to think about the third step, that is the stakeholders that need to be involved to make this happen. So who will be affected by this grounding action? Who has the decision-making power, and to involve these people in the process. Then in the fourth step, that is the step that we are actually now, is in the implementation step. So these actors of change need to start implementing these actions. So we have to have this step-by-step plan, who does what, when, and how. And of course, we will get obstacles, but there's obstacles, but there are also resources there. So we have to recognize which would be the obstacles and which are the resources that are already there and we can learn from these experiences. So if we continue this loop, we will get, actually, if we follow all these steps, we will get to our big vision. So in our context at ESF, which are the grounding actions that we decided to do? Regarding the gender equality, we have two grounding actions. One is the inclusion of gender issues at the ESF internal processes and structures. This meaning regarding the work-life balance, regarding our code of conduct at ESF. Then grounding actions 2 is the inclusion of gender issues in the grant evaluation. For all the grant evaluation missions that we participate, we look for reviewers, we organize panels for grant evaluation. Then for the research ethics, grounding action 3 is personal data management in ESF activities. Also, this is an internal revision of our procedures at ESF. Grounding action 4 is ethics in grant evaluation, also how to foster and get better ethics in the research assessment process in the grant evaluation services. Then we have for open access, grounding action 5, that is promoting open access culture within the organization and its network. And then we have the governance key, that is defining the ESF strategy for the embedment of RRI. And this is really an umbrella key, because this governance key will facilitate all the other grounding actions. So there are particular activities that has been done for each of the grounding actions, but also there are some cross-cutting activities. This means that are activities that go through all the RRI keys. One of them was the creation, as a practical example, one of them is the creation of working groups. So we have created the gender equality working groups and the ethics and open access working group. I know ethics and open access has nothing to do together, but we are a small organization, and people that were interested in ethics were also interested in open access. So we merged them because it doesn't make sense to have million meetings with million working groups. And what we did, as in any RRI or institutional step towards RRI, we have to make these actions very participatory. So in these working groups, we have the people that attended is anyone that is really willing to attend, so anyone working at ESF, but we also have the participation of grant evaluation members, so the people that work in this area. We also have the participation of the management at these working groups and of GRACE team members. And each of these working groups have a leader that is in charge of organizing and moving the agenda forward. Also, another cross-cutting activity that we did was to organize what we call the RRI info sessions. This is our raising awareness activities within our organization, which are very short, it's 15 minutes, and so far they have been really successful because we understood that people were really willing to learn more about RRI. And sometimes we just need to present very basic concept of RRI to create a common background for all of us, so that we all speak the same language and we all understand the importance of these actions. So this is why I put there RRI 101 issues, because they're very basic, is where we don't go to very elevated RRI theory. And we try to make them fun, so at the end we make always a quiz that we combine learning with also some play. And another cross-cutting activity is that we are working on it now is the revision of internal documents with an RRI perspective. This means what we are revising now the code of conduct of ESF, this for internal issues, and also we are drafting new guidelines for reviewers, this for our ground evaluation services. So as we're running out of time, I will just show some examples of the particular activities we did for gender equality. So as you know, GRACE started in 2019, and this first year was mainly the definition of our roadmap. So that's why we don't have much activities that started in 2019, but we started there the working groups, and of course the identification of our objectives and definition of our activities. And this year, what we have been working, we have been revising the harassment policy. We have been revising the staff manual. We started something that is very important for us, that is the self-assessment process. We defined with the Gender Equality Working Group indicators, qualitative and quantitative, that will be key to evaluate our change, to evaluate how we are improving over the time, and also to set the baseline. So how are we now in these terms of gender equality policies at ESF? And this will help us because next year we will start drafting our gender equality plan. So this would be the basis for the drafting, or the basis for the reflection for the drafting of the gender equality plan. As I mentioned before, we are reviewing our code of conduct with the gender lenses on, gender perspective. We started already the gender equality info session, and as I mentioned, one of the objectives of that we have at ESF is not only embedding RRI in our activities, but also in our network. We want to foster RRI in our network organizations. So we hosted with the Gender Equality Academy project a training on gender bias in recruitment and career progression. This time we had to do it online because of the pandemic, but we are hoping next year to host it here in Strasbourg, another training. Regarding our second grounding action is to include gender issues in the grant evaluation. Here this year we reviewed our share of women at the ESF College of Experts. The ESF College of Experts is a database where we have good, excellent reviewers that we normally assign to the proposals that we evaluate in the research, in the grant evaluation team. So we review the share of women in this College of Experts. We start setting targets for each domain, and we are starting now a campaign to invite women scientists to join this College of Experts and get better gender balance. We are also, as I mentioned before, we also define some targets for these grant evaluation missions, and we started drafting the ESF guidelines for reviewers. This is very important because, well, it's very similar what Marco presented. We will set there our values, but also we will set there some tools to deal with, for example, unconscious bias that affect women, but also unconscious bias in a more general way that might affect diversity or some geographical issues. So, and also for our plan next year will be also to provide some training tools for the reviewers to avoid and to fight these biases. Regarding the research ethics and integrity, here we have these two grounding actions. One is internal to ESF activities, and another one is external, also in the grant evaluation. So the more or less the reasoning is the same. We're doing some raising awareness activities with this info session within our organization. We are reviewing the code of conduct also in terms of GDPR and ethics, and we are drafting our guidelines for reviewers, taking into account also ethical aspects and open access and open science aspects. So now some practical things. What are the challenges and obstacles you might encounter, at least from our experience when doing institutional change? One of them, so any change causes, of course, resistance. So one of the challenges is to keep high the energy. So if you are trying to dive into the experience of doing institutional change at your organizations, just try to keep in mind that you might have to keep your energy high for the negotiations. Also, there's always the challenge at any organization of limited time and dedicated budget. That is this one of the main negotiation parts that you will have to deal with. Another challenge and obstacle is sometimes positive actions are not well understood. So it's a learning process for the people that are in charge of driving this change. and also from the people that are facilitating this change in the organization. It's a collective learning on how to do things better and how to frame actions better. And one challenge that we had at ESF, because we are all the time associating, people are all the time associating this institutional change with the GRACE project. So at this point, we are trying to make it independent, to try to frame it differently in order to understand that GRACE project will finish in 1 year, but the institutional change and our commitment at ESF with responsible research and innovation will continue. So we have to guarantee this sustainability of our actions. And then, what are our lessons learned? Lesson learned, just in this, what I was saying, you have to keep your energy high, is to choose the battles, to give air some time to discussions, to avoid exhaustion. And also a very important lesson learned is that this is a top-down and bottom-up process, meaning that it will not work if just the management is compromising this and telling everyone what to do. It will not work if it's just the people, the staff, that it's really willing to change things, but the management is not compromised. So it has to be a compromise between the two of them to make things move forward. And also another lesson learned is to understand what motivates the actors of change and try to frame the actions accordingly, and to use these people that are really motivated in changing things and really to help them doing it, and use their energy in a good sense that will promote change. And also a lesson learned is that at least in our case, ESF staff is very interested in knowing more about RRI and to learn how to apply these principles into their daily practices. So we have to build in this motivation. And some of the resources that we had, for example, we have the RRI tools webpage. So I recommend everyone that it's trying to learn more about RRI to go to this webpage, that you will find practical examples of all the RRI keys, how to implement it at research funding, research performing organizations. And also we invite you to enter to our GRACE project website. We have a section that has resources, and there you will find guidance documents about each of the RRI keys. And it's very nice because they also include some theory with practical examples. So I invite you all interested in doing institutional change at your institutions to visit that. So thank you very much. And now I will stop sharing my screen. Yeah. And we will go to the questions. So here also all the panelists, if you want to participate and to make a question, you are welcome to.
So AJ, so I think there was a question for Zoya to start. So Zoya, one of the questions was, what was the specific approach of the project to try to assure the sustainability of RRI actions in the institutions? I can say the question again if you wish. And I can actually.
Could you please repeat it? Because I was looking at the question and answer session, but I don't see the.
No worries, and I will send it to you in the chat.
Okay.
The question was, what was the specific approach of the project that you're running to try to assure the sustainability of the RRI actions in the institutions?
Well, it was up to each of the organizations which were in a way studied under Rri Practice. I can speak about our organizational approach at ARC Fund. We have planned trainings on all RRI keys, but during our studies, we found out that it was not only at ARC Fund, but also at the Ministry of Education and Science and the National Science Fund, organizations which are more involved in EU level projects like Horizon 2020 are much better aware of the Rri policy framework compared to organizations and teams not participating actively in the European programs. This was one thing, but as part of the, our actions, we start first with trainings planned for the staff of ARC Fund on the Rri keys, and then jointly, because like the European Science Foundation, we are not a big organization, and it is again jointly to work towards integrating step by step the different keys and the actions we have foreseen in our outlook in the overall organizational policy, to say. And here I have to say that in this regard, we have the support of the top management, because we believe that integrating the Rri keys and developing our organizational policy on Rri will make us, how to say, more visible or more desirable as partners as well, showing that we have targeted actions in this regard. But things will not happen, I mean, change will not happen overnight. It's a process, and it's a process that will take probably 2 or 3 years.
Thank you very much, Zoya. We are running a little late, and so what I will recommend now is we do a coffee break of 10 minutes. So we start back at 10:40, and we will have all the rest of the question at the end of the second session, because Maria will have to leave. She has another meeting, so we will not be late. So now we make a pause of 10 minutes. At 10:40, we come back here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. I know, sorry, I know it was a short break. Yeah, we are almost all back. So we will start now the second session that is more dedicated and focused to 2 Rri keys. One is gender equality, and the second one is research ethics and integrity. So we'll start with the with the gender equality actions in Europe by Maria San Giuliano. Thank you, Maria, for being here.
Thank you, Eugenia. Let me just share my screen and also possibly visualize as a presentation. Okay. So good morning, everybody, and I would like to thank again the European Science Foundation for inviting me. Oh, it's going without waiting for my input, sorry, for inviting me, as we are also partners together with K&I in the Casper project, so on gender equality and certification systems on gender equality for research institutions in Europe. I was very pleased to accept the invitation because I always found very fascinating how the institutional change for gender equality concept and policy tool has been sort of transitioned by the European Commission from gender equality policies to broader Rri policy frameworks. But it's very much the same approach, broadened from one single policy area as gender equality to societal and open science issues in RRI. So I want to focus on gender equality policies as they are defined in Europe, and what we can expect in the forthcoming work program. And basically, it's important to start from the evidence. I'm sure that most of you are aware of this she figures picture, which has become very popular and represents the main contradictions in terms of gender structural inequalities in research institutions, just highlighting this scissor and just showing how starting from an overrepresentation of women in the students' population, then vertical segregation is featuring the highest levels of the academic and research careers. This is only part of the problem. Actually, structural gender inequalities in research are a much broader set of problems, including also knowledge production, not only recruitment and retainment of female personnel, but also the way scientific research is constructed, and the lack of consideration of gender as a dimension in research content. But this is an interesting starting point, and also constitute the reason for why this issue became more and more prominent in European policies. It's worth stressing how gender equality in research and higher education as a policy framework has quite a long story already. It all started back at the beginning of the 2000, in 1999, with a communication on women in science titled "Mobilizing Women to Enrich European Research." And then it continued with the foundation of the European Platform for Women Scientists, the creation of the Helsinki Group on Gender in Research. Basically, the integration of gender equality into the funding mechanisms has started already in FP6 actually, where all participants to the program were required to include gender action plans for the project, not as an institution. And that measure actually was unsuccessful, resulted to be unsuccessful due to the lack of expertise and knowledge about what was all about. And basically, it ultimately reduced to a sort of tick-boxing exercise by applicants. So slowly, as you can see also from this picture, a set of complex and integrated measures were put forward by the Commission, starting to monitor the situation, and the She Figures report was initiated, from which the scissor diagram that I previously showed comes from. But also starting to involve the national contact points, and starting working on the training and the capacity building of competencies on gender in research, seen as necessary tools for change. Until when in Horizon Europe, then the requirement of gender equality plans was removed, but a more systematic work to integrate gender equality within Rri priorities was done, and the expert group, the standing working group on gender equality in science and research was funded, and gender equality became a cross-cutting issue throughout, to be monitored throughout Horizon Europe. This policy framework actually evolved a lot along the years. It became increasingly complex, and policy goals, policy tools, the arguments used were changing a long time. From an initial approach which was in a way emphasizing the lack of representation of women in science and the access to decision-making position, more emphasis was placed on the need of integrating gender also in the content of scientific research. Initially, the emphasis was on fixing the women, so to speak. There was an attention to support individual scientists and academic managers with training measures, individual support measures, while slowly the focus was really on fixing the institution. And the concept of institutional change became prominent and really represented the core of the European policies, complemented by the need of building the capacities through training, through community of practices, and more recently also looking at possible certification schemes. Also, the arguments for gender equality, for supporting gender equality in research have changed and evolved, initially emphasizing on equality and justice-based arguments, and gradually expanding to more economic type of arguments, I would say, highlighting how gender equality and diversity in research would help fostering excellence and also competitiveness. But basically, the new approach from the Commission is also trying to put forward a view of equality, of gender equality, which is not binary and not looking at female-male inequalities only, but integrates also an intersectional view, and therefore considers how gender equality, gender structural inequalities are intersected with other axes of potential discriminations from on ethnic grounds, class-based grounds, or gender identity and sexual orientations, and more. This is just to give an idea of the complexities at stake. It is also, we have to acknowledge it, a bit of a contested terrain, not always well perceived by member states. We know that recently several countries have, especially in Eastern Europe, have banned gender studies in their countries. It happened in Hungary. There are similar ongoing developments in Romania. So it raises resistances. You already mentioned resistances when previous speakers referred to the need for institutional change and the fact that whenever you try to promote change, you also obviously meet resistances. And this is also the case for gender equality, of course. So this is with this slide, I wanted basically to highlight the main stakeholders and the key documents on gender equality promoted by the Commission. There is a new strategy in place on gender equality. There are ERA progress reports which are measuring the way priority 4 on gender equality in research is achieved and met by each member state. And there are documents from the standing working group on gender, which are all worth taking into consideration. On the European Institute for Gender Equality website, you also find the GEAR toolkit, which is actually presenting how institutional change for gender equality should work in a very similar way to what you already illustrated for Rri. Meaning the typical steps of the processes, including initial audit, internal assessment, design of a plan, implementation of a plan, and of course, monitoring throughout the process. The Commission has also monitored quite thoroughly what happened within Horizon 2020 in terms of women representations. And the following two slides are actually stolen from the Commission report. And what is clear is that there is still a lot to do in terms of particularly vertical segregation. As you see, in Horizon 2020, only 28% of project coordinators were women, and we are actually doing better in terms of the project workforce. And a consistent effort was made by the side of the Commission into reaching a gender balance into expert groups and evaluation, as well as advisory groups. Even though this, it was noticed, doesn't really let's say, solve the issue of the lack of gender expertise within the evaluation panels. And the expertise is needed to understand and assess to what point a given proposal is actually integrating gender into the content of the proposed research. So there are definitely open issues. The monitoring in Horizon 2020 also included the gender in research content component, and you can see that also in this respect there's definitely a long way ahead to solve the issue. Only 110 proposals out of 473 were having in the topics an explicit gender dimension measured. We have to say that in terms of institutional change, as you probably know, the SWOFS program has funded several projects on gender equality in particular, and promoted institutional change in 130 institutions across Europe, excluding the call from 2020. So a lot has been going on to this respect. It's not clear whether this will still continue, most likely in a reduced way in terms of direct funding for supporting institutional change. But there are other developments upcoming. As I mentioned, it's not only an issue of representation, it's not only about how many women, or it's not only about head count, but it's also about integrating gender into the content of research, and not only research, but also innovations, meaning including also technology transfer and product design, not only blue sky research. The former Helsinki group, now called Gendered Innovation Group, is composed, has just released this new policy review that I really recommend as an interesting reading, resulting from the work of 24 experts, and it includes case studies on how scientific research on chronic pain, facial recognition, smart mobility, marine science, virtual assistants, etc., can integrate a gender dimension throughout the research cycle process, and contains methodologies to this respect. Gendered innovations as such, the report itself highlights this shift from gender in research only to gender in R&I more consistently. There are several recommendations put forward by the Gender Action Horizon 2020 project, which is working side by side with the Standing Working Group on Gender at Rri. Recommendations which are pushing towards approaching institutional change and gender equality in research in a broader way, and therefore addressing also the business enterprise sector. I wouldn't go really in details of the recommendations that I encourage to read through the policy briefs from the Gender Action project, but the project itself has also done interesting research to highlight, to further highlight how there are actually correlations and strong correlations between how member states performs in terms of gender equality on one side, and how they performs in terms of innovation. And the picture here also represents this positive correlation, showing how strong innovators in Europe are also strong countries in terms of gender equality and gender in research. What will happen now while we are shifting from Horizon 2020 to Horizon Europe? Definitely, gender equality will be, it is already part of the framework regulations of the program. And there are gender mainstreaming and gender balance, gender in research content are explicitly mentioned in Article 6A and Article 45 of the framework regulations. But also there is a mention to the fact that the Commission will keep monitoring and reporting on this throughout Horizon Europe, and gender balance in advisory boards and evaluation panels will also continued. A line of activity under Pillar 2 and Cluster 2 is also envisaged, but most importantly, what was recently announced was the fact that gender equality plans will become requirements for all applicants and the focus is now on public research organizations applying for Horizon Europe. This was announced formally by the Commission and by DG Research during the Research and Innovation Days on 25th September. You can still find webinar recordings on the Research and Innovation Days and the website from the Commission to learn more about this. A transition period is envisaged, but a decision has been made to really set this prerequisite as an incentive to push forward institutional change for gender equality. When it comes to institutional change in general, as you also already mentioned, it's always a matter of bottom-up and top-down, and you combine, so to speak, the stick and the carrot. In this last period, eventually, it looks like a decision was made to go for the carrot more consistently, meaning for accessing research funds, an incentive has been set up. What several research funding organizations are doing in Europe, in Ireland especially, and also what is happening in the UK through the Athena's One Award connected to incentives as a requirement to incentives to get funds, it is really showing that this mechanism works. This is what it's envisaged to happen also in Horizon Europe. In the meantime, the Commission is funding projects, strategic projects to support European research organizations to build the internal capacity to create their gender equality plans. And this is happening via the GE Academy project, offering a comprehensive capacity building program free for all European research institutions. Community of practices through the Act on Gender project. And a feasibility study carried out by the Casper Consortium and studying the opportunity and the feasibility of setting up a EU-level certification scheme on gender equality. These are strategic projects in the sense that are coordination and support projects with expectations to change the landscape, to support, to continue support research institutions in Europe, even after the projects will be concluded. And therefore to guide this transition from funded institutional change projects to incentivized, more autonomous actions from research institutions. And having said that, I just conclude and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Maria, for this nice presentation. I know you have to leave because you have another meeting, no? So there's a question addressed to you from one of the participants that said, do you know the planned timing for the required gender equality plans for research institutions? And how does these gender equality plans go together with the HR excellence strategy from the Commission?
Yes, the details on the timing are not clarified yet. As I mentioned, what was announced was that there will be a transitioning period, probably for the first 1 year after the first calls will be published. It will be increasingly asking for proof of commitment from research institutions. So the plans will have to be approved by the management of the organizations, and there will also monitoring processes will be asked to be put in place. And then the issue of the coordination with the HR excellence strategy, I think it's not clarified either. Indeed, it's an important issue. Also in Casper, as Hildy and Eugenia know, we are taking into account how a potential certification scheme on gender equality could be integrated with the HR excellence strategy for researchers. It's very much everything under development. It's a changing scenario. Not all is clear at this stage. I just wanted to highlight a few trends and the most recent developments.
Thank you, Maria. And just one small question. So for all institutions that don't have a gender equality plan, because we know that you participate at Gender Equality Academy, and there you have many trainings about building a gender equality plan. So for those institutions that want to start building one, which would be the first steps that you would recommend to take? And at what time, so how quickly should these institutions start reacting if they want to apply to Horizon Europe funding?
Well, the recent developments really suggest to take action as soon as possible and to start building the internal capacities. It was not by chance that I highlighted this, especially Gender Academy and Act on Gender, because it's important to take advantage of these opportunities which are now open. Obviously, there is expertise around Europe that can be consulted by research institutions, but it's also important to build internal capacity and to learn from those universities which have already started. And this can happen also from the community of practices which are formed in the Act on Gender project.
Thank you very much, Maria.
Thank you. I'm sorry for leaving. I just wish you a nice continuation and conclusion of the webinar.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So now we will continue with Jan, that you will present.